because M. Night Shyamalan has in fact talked to both studios, Marvel and DC. And this is what he certainly had to say. So again, this is from comicbook.com. M. Night Shyamalan could one day be putting his twists on the comic book movie as we know it. The writer-director has already fulfilled his own superhero dreams when he surprised everyone with an unbreakable sequel in the form of Split, which led to Glass, rounding out a trilogy. As he gears up to release the second season of Servant with Apple TV, Shyamalan talked with comicbook.com in an interview where he was asked if he talked with studios about Marvel, DC, or other superhero properties for movie ideas. As it turns out, he has. This is exactly what M. Night Shyamalan winds up saying. He says, I've had many conversations over the years about many of the superheroes with many of the studios that own them and how I would want to approach it. He says, and it's one of those things that I think this is my style. If there were ever a situation, I mean, I would do it. I made my own comic book movie the way I wanted to make my comic book movie, but the minimalism, the insinuating, the not using CGI, all of that stuff is a very different language. So whenever we had those conversations in the past about XYZ person, it's your character or franchise, I get so nervous about like, hey, this is not what you would want me to do. To make it very quiet, tiny, and sort of introspective. So I do find it interesting that Shyamalan is really just kind of pointing out the idea that it maybe not necessarily his style of how he writes or directs his films may necessarily line up with how we've seen some of these Marvel and DC sort of movies of the past, or how we see them currently to today, right? The idea of M. Night really being more of a minimalist when it comes to his movies, not using a bunch of CGI. It's always very much more intimate, if you will, a little bit more of a smaller film compared to what we've come to know from these big budget sort of comic book films. So I do find it really intriguing that Marvel and DC has at least reached out to him, had some sort of conversations. But I do find it interesting also that M. Night doesn't point out the characters that they might have talked about before, right? It says, as comic book movies have shown a tremendous range in recent years, with titles like Logan and Joker breaking the mold and being focused heavily on one character, perhaps Shyamalan could come around to such an idea in the future. He says, in fact, it sounds like Shyamalan would need a bit of convincing to jump to any franchise, even if it were to make it his own original title with a continued story. He says, you never say never, but I don't believe I'd make a sequel. But the Unbreakable script in its entirety was essentially the 3 movies. So I would be really interested to see. I can't lie, guys, as much of a train wreck that this possibly could be, there is a part of me that's super intrigued to kind of know what character he might have been interested in tackling, what characters were maybe brought to his discussion, if you will. So let me throw this over to you guys here. I want to have a little bit of fun here. When you think of Marvel and DC characters, and you think of the style in which M. Night Shyamalan tells his story, regardless, while I think a lot of us want him to stay away, is there a particular character that you wouldn't mind trying to see him take his shot with? Either of you guys can go first, or if you want me to go first, I'll throw out one of my guys. It's up to you. Anybody, any takers? I got any takers?
I think that the smartest move for him to do, if he were to do either Marvel or DC, would be to stick to a horror type character. And essentially make sure it's a horror character that doesn't need special effects, because I think, and he even does point this out himself. This isn't fully just me being an asshole. It is partially me quoting him as well. He doesn't direct special effects very well at all. You look at movies like After Earth and The Last Airbender, they are kind of a disaster just because you can tell that he very much knows how to work with the lower budget a lot better. That's why I think Split was a really good movie. I think him working with Blumhouse, I'd be intrigued to see what other movies he comes out with that studio, because I think the two of them paired together are a great combo. Like, I wasn't a fan of The Visit or Glass. Like, I thought both of them were pretty dumb in their own ways, but they had some cool ideas with it. And I do think that there is a lot of potential with him working with Blumhouse in particular. But when it comes to Marvel and when it comes to Marvel specifically, I don't see it ever working, because Marvel has a very specific formula that they have with their movies. I don't see Marvel ever stepping back and being like, okay, we're just going to do this $60 million movie and it's going to be all horror based. And, so you can just go ahead and do what you want with this. I don't see that ever happening. DC, on the other hand, they already have been doing that for quite a bit by just kind of having very different styles with all their television shows and movies. So I think he would work a lot better with DC, maybe if he was doing not Justice League Dark, but characters from Justice League Dark. I could possibly see a Constantine movie coming from it, and even maybe Swamp Thing.
Oh, so those would be the two characters that you would see. Constantine and Swamp Thing would be your choices?
Yeah, one or the other, not both.
Oh, gotcha. I gotcha. What about you, Indy? You hear this idea. First off, Stuart, I do agree. If there is any camp that I think Shyamalan would really fit well into, it definitely give me DC all day. I think he could probably tap into some Marvel characters, yeah, but I just feel like his what he does as a director just seems like it would just fit DC kind of pretty well in that sense. What about you, Indy, though? You hear that studios have approached him. M. Night hasn't mentioned some of the characters that they've talked about. But if you could think of a character for M. Night to go ahead and tackle, who would you want to see him tackle? And just your thoughts on M. Night just in general having these talks with Marvel and DC.
I don't want him attached to any comic book movies, but I made a list. I have a list of characters that I'm pretty sure isn't on either one of your lists that I really feel that that he would do very well with. But for the fact that they're so obscure of characters, I don't know how they would. Well, it'll probably work with DC. I don't know how the hell they would even work into what's going on. You know what I'm saying? In the Marvel universe for a movie, maybe a Disney Plus television show. Mm-hmm. But my number one character, which I was trying to think about. Now I want to do a breakdown of this character since now we done came up with this question. Arcade. Because Arcade is a character that brings himself akin to the Saw franchise.
Wait, who? Arcade?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like Marvel's version of Jigsaw. You know what I'm saying? He's just like a sadist with an elitist twist. You know what I'm saying? Like a master manipulator. It'd just be something interesting to see how you could tie that story up. You know what I'm saying? What's going on and attach themselves to different things.
I like that you're going. I like that you're going deep, Indy, because I feel like for Shyamalan, it's gonna have to be a deep character, like a deep cut. I feel like for him, you know what I mean?
Yeah. If it's gonna be a more known, popular character, I would love to see like an early origins of like Mr. Sinister. Something, you know what I'm saying, before he became actually, you know what I'm saying, who he is, you know what I'm saying, in the Marvel universe, or probably what led him to that, especially since we're gonna have mutants pop up somewhere or another. For DC, I do believe he could do Green Arrow well.
Green Arrow, okay.
I do believe he'd be able to do Green Arrow well. I do believe he'd be able to do somebody like not DC related, but Hit Girl, and maybe a Matt Murdock, maybe be able to pull off a Daredevil. You know what I'm saying? If they wanted to bring that into, just because these are places where he doesn't have to deal with big special effects, and it'll be more of, you know what I'm saying, the story. I would love a dark Daredevil-esque movie, but with more of dealing with the fear of what the hand has coming. You know what I'm saying? Like, you actually don't know who they are, but come from the direction that it's this thing that they control everything through fear. You know what I'm saying? That people are scared to cross them. And, you know, it'd just be an interesting aspect to see how he will put his staple on that.